the purpose of this sort of interview is not only to sort of celebrate the 30th anniversary of NCC, but also, to sort of give a spotlight on some of the people who have been in the field for a very long time, especially for someone like me who's not even like on the formal academic track to being an Asian studies librarian yet. So I've been able to speak with a couple of other luminaries in the field, and I'm really, really glad to get this opportunity to speak with you and get a little bit of a better sense for, your journey through and to Asian studies librarianship, the sort of changes that you have seen throughout your time in the field, and of course, how you feel it will go looking forward as you're retiring very soon from a very illustrious career. So I guess a really big question just to start. So what was your journey like to becoming an Asian studies librarian? Did you always know that you wanted to do it, or was there a landmark event that sparked that?
Okay. Since my career is quite long, so this answer to this question might be a little bit long. So if you need to, interrupt me or ask me more, just, feel free to do that, okay? So actually my journey is somewhat unique for Japan Studies Librarianship, okay? So I'm gonna start from the beginning. My career in the United States began actually working at the private international Japanese research firm located in Washington, D.C. And I was the research librarian and office manager. And I managed a small private company collection and provided information services for the company's researchers in Japan and New York, as well as other researchers who engaged in collaborative projects with the company. In addition to book collections, I obtained documents produced by US government agencies, US Congress, and other research institutions located in Washington, D.C. And upon request, I also provided information related to Japan to American researchers. So working at this international research firm first kind of opened my eyes, so to speak. And I didn't pay much attention when I lived in Japan, but I learned about substantial differences between the United States and Japan with regards to information dissemination and the public's access to information and perception toward information. So I requested my company's assistance to deepen my knowledge at the graduate level, school of library and information science. And for the first time at school, I learned and became fascinated about the origin of public libraries in the United States, federal government information policies, and foundation of democratic societies, citizens' rights to know or citizens' rights to information, and above all, the responsibility of librarians to uphold people's access to knowledge and to help preserve knowledge for the future generations. All those things I even didn't think about before. Right. And one more thing I wanted to emphasize is that one of the most exciting career-changing encounters was when I witnessed this amazing librarian during a symposium I attended. This was called Japan Information, which was held at Library of Congress while I was studying. And this person kept asking insightful and challenging questions and making comments in front of, I should say, over 200 symposium participants. And her knowledge was amazing. Her demeanor was so forceful, yet respectful. So I decided I was, took the liberty of introducing myself to her after the symposium. And this amazing librarian was Ms. Maureen Donovan. She was at that time the Japanese Studies Librarian at the Ohio State University Library. She retired a while ago. And but at that time, I boldly asked her to be the subject for my assignment in a class called Interviewing Professionals. Okay, that was, I think, in the library management class. And to my delight, Ms. Donovan agreed and commended me for my proactive approach. So, of course, in reality, I was scared to death to talk to someone like her. But it really was very encouraging. So meeting with Ms. Donovan and interacting with her made me dream to be an academic librarian like her in the future.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. So after I graduated from the library school, I was still working for a while. But 1 year later, I entered into academic librarianship with the American University, Washington, D.C. Library. So I worked as a reference and a business librarian there. So during this time, I became a member of the American Library Association, ALA, and Association for College and Research Libraries, ACRL, and then discovered East Asian librarianship through this ALA affiliated organization called the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, APALA in short, okay? So networking and interacting with these APALA members helped me learn about the new world of, so to speak, East Asian librarianship and other career potentials that I didn't know much about. So I became more proactive to learn about Asia and East Asia related scholarship and librarianship activities through such organization like the Association for Asian Studies, AAS, and Council on East Asian Libraries, we call CEO. And but at the American University, in a sense, the librarians hold a tenure track library faculty status. And we were provided 5 hours a week research time. So I decided to research on government information flows between the United States and Japan based on my work or work experience at the private research firm. So I was awarded delightfully a research grant to supplement a field trip to Japan and met many librarians and information specialists in Japan. And I was then requested to present my findings to share with the members of the CEO, which was held at, again, Library of Congress during the ASCO annual conference in Washington, D.C. So although I was quite interested in Japan's information and publication world and 10 years of experience working at the Japanese company, I was not a Japan studies librarian yet. So it's kind of long history before that, right? And well, a couple of months after we relocated to Hawaii. Luckily, I was hired as a part-time reference librarian for the Business, Humanities, and Social Sciences department at the University of Hawaii at Manoa Library. We call it UHM Library. And during the library orientation tour, I was quite impressed with the UHM Library's Japanese studies collections, which was quite big, actually. So I attended campus public seminars offered by the Center for Japanese Studies. I started volunteering for the local resource center of the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii and started learning and experiencing firsthand local immigrant culture, especially East Asian immigrant cultures in Hawaii. And I became really fascinated with Hawaii's historical and diverse communities, as often referred as the crossroad between East and West. So I began to think my language skills, knowledge, and my bicultural experiences at academia and a private company could be better utilized for the Japanese studies field, and to consider Japanese studies librarianship as another option for my professional career in the future. And well, luckily, I was appointed in this position in June 1999. So that's how I became the Japanese studies librarian. It's a kind of a long history, but that was very interesting, path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's super fascinating. I think one of the things that I have heard a lot from my discussions with other, Asian studies librarians is that, more and more people, like either whether they're already in the field or sort of coming into the field, have lots of different experiences from other areas of work. Some are even just completely separate from like information sciences or librarianship entirely. Like, you have more of like a research background, some come from business, etc. And I feel like that sort of diverse background of, if not trades, at least experiences in different industries or just different kinds of work can really add a lot of depth to, what you bring to the field. I was really struck by what you mentioned about like government information flows and like, public information, the right to know, et cetera, public access to knowledge. Because I felt like, and maybe it was a bit of the language barrier, but like accessing libraries and public information and stuff when I lived in Japan briefly felt much more difficult than it is in the United States. It feels like it's a lot harder to navigate the system and to find the information that I want, if it's even available.
Exactly.
Whether that's particular books or, what should be, I think, public record, just like building codes and things like that. Has that informed your librarianship work in any particular way, like your research goals or what classes or students you're particularly involved with?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In a sense, like I said, I didn't realize when I was in Japan, I thought that was the way it was. Very difficult to access to information and no clear pathways to find the information. It was really difficult, but I thought that's what, how it was. Then when I came to the United States, it much more clear-cut, organized, and they shared this how to get to it, with the public in general. So once you learned how the information is generated, disseminated through where or what venue, once you learn that in this country, and then it's much easier to kind of pinpoint where you should look for the certain, information that you need. So that big difference truly influenced my way of thinking. Wow, I wanted to learn more about this. And then I met amazing librarians, so I wanted to be in that profession in someday.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I think also, and maybe you could speak a little bit more to this just in general, but the difference, I guess, in how do I say it? If there are ways in which you're trying to increase access to knowledge in sort of academic contexts, beyond just obviously, as an academic librarian, I feel like there are sometimes barriers to knowledge, like certain publications that like cost a lot for students or researchers to have access to. And so you have new things like that disseminate research papers and such more publicly or more easily accessibly. But I was just wondering if there are particular ways within your work as an academic librarian that you try to perhaps promote or at least have students think more critically about information dissemination.
Yeah, I just want to focus on the Japanese information or Japanese information. Over 22 years, it has been improved dramatically. once Japan started moving towards something, it takes time to a certain point, but once it just reached the threshold, they truly improve or change dramatically. So I saw 22 years ago, there was a lot of obstacles that us, Japan studies librarians have had to fight to improve, the infrastructure in Japan or the way people think about disseminating information. But I can see that this 2 decades, after 2 decades, still there are quite a few things we need to push, but it was a huge, huge change or improvements, I should say. And it's not be obvious, but I think all the people's efforts to communicate with our stakeholders in Japan, our colleagues in Japan, scholars in Japan, what we NCC did, concerted efforts to talk to those people or communicate with those people, changed a lot of the situation, infrastructure in Japan. And then we still need to, it's not over yet, but we still need to, make our voices or researchers or students' voices heard by the, producers of information or disseminators of the information. So in that sense, I truly appreciate NCC's efforts all along, such a long time, 30 years. That was a long time, but we needed it, and we will need it in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really insightful. I think I didn't sort of connect the dots before, like my difficulty with accessing certain things in Japan, and then like librarianship as a field that revolves around information. So those sorts of progressions, I think, are the sort of progress that has been made is really great. What do you feel, I guess, aside from access to or dissemination of information, are possibly some other challenges that face Asian studies librarians, both in the United States and abroad?
Well, going back a little bit about the different experiences, my experience, going into Japanese studies librarian is somewhat different, like I said. But I wanted to emphasize everyone that any experience you have in your life actually helps a lot to be a librarian, and no small experience is wasted if you become a librarian. So, it's a little bit shrinking, community in regards to Asian studies librarians or, Japanese studies librarians now due to budget crisis. And some other maybe, changing behavior of the users. There are different things that affect the market of this profession. Administrators tend to save money, funds, that's their job. So they think that all East Asian librarians can do everything, individual area. But so they cut, individual position and merge into, say, they say CJK, areas. But, they need to think about what implication of those actions, just to save some funds in the short term, but would it be, good for the collections or good for the services or good for users? So that kind of stuff I can see now is a transition time, how we should make our points known to those administrators who might not know much about area studies or, as per se. So we need to really, come together to communicate their decision, short-term decision might affect a lot of, very big impact in the future.
Mhm.
So that's what we are in now. I think that is a big challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that I have friends and colleagues in many different professions, and I feel like that seems to be pretty standard across the board. I feel like everyone I've talked to who hasn't majored in computer science or something, it's like, it's just so hard to find jobs. Like all these different institutions, whether they're academic or private, so many of them are reducing their staff and trying to cut costs and combining departments into one. And like you said, the implications are just astounding if you think about it for longer than the next fiscal year, right? Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I've noticed within and without this field. I think I've also noticed, I guess on a more like neutral to positive note, and also sort of touching on information access, like we mentioned earlier, especially with COVID, a lot of things have sort of transitioned to online. Like we're doing this over Zoom right now. I had a great conversation with some other librarians about digitization of different archives, both scanning and then transcribing different collections. So that's just one of many changes. But I was just wondering how you sort of feel about that process of digitization, how maybe you have worked with that, or how you see it influencing the field going forward.
Yeah, definitely digitization, the way we actually provide our collections have changed because of the COVID situation. Right. Controlled digital lending now coming into into view, and our library started doing that too, and that's wonderful. We can reach a lot of people, and we can digitize our collections, to one-to-one lending, and that was wonderful. But also, preserving our knowledge in the prints, does not diminish. I mean, to me is the print source, going back to, I heard a comment that, okay, now you are digitizing everything, so we don't have to keep all those books, all the books and some historical books, because somebody else already digitized and you can access to. But is that really true? Accessing the print books and accessing information in digital form are not the same to me. Not only for librarians, but to researchers. In Hawaii, there are a lot of researchers come from all over the world. And when the reason why is they wanted access to original, books, original documents here in the library. And when I attending their, access, sometimes they scream with joy because they found something in the print books that they cannot find through somebody else's digitized format. That margin, there's some notes in the margin, actually that gives their viewer insightful information. Or even the inserts, we keep everything, right? Even inserts. And they found something, piece of, looks like, gibberish to some other people, the insert, they found something, or in between. So, and then technology nowadays actually can analyze paper quality or, composition of the paper. And there's so many things that I'm glad we have the original prints or books, so to me is digitization is wonderful, and expand access, and for a certain way preserve the original, because, we don't have to handle the original as much, but it doesn't mean that we can throw away or discard or the print collections. And so I see that more like a hybrid. One method has clearly have a lot of advantages and benefits. So we can keep that, But the other one too, it doesn't mean, those two methods exclude each other. It's more like complement each other to me. And we need to keep telling that to people who just only see that digitization is a solution for everything.
Yeah, no, I profoundly agree. I'm very much like a paper. I've been taking notes on paper. So, yeah, I totally agree. Like the little marginalia, inserts, even the spatial sort of relationship between certain pages, if they're saying like, oh, go to page 43, where I continued this note, especially for personal papers and diaries, I feel like that is irreplaceable. So I totally agree with you on that point. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think,
yeah,
oh, yes, go ahead.
The books have their own histories too, right? And then like us librarians, we have to do research or something. But I love book plates and accession, registration records and stuff. That actually unravel the threads from us or book to a lot of different world or people, historical events and stuff. So that's only, gives us a chance to find out through this physical book. For example, our book with a certain book plates of the accession of those books. So, I just, this morning, I listened to the symposium called Migrations of Books. And it was wonderful, wonderful opportunity to learn about each book's history and how books interact with people. And that actually tied to a local culture, local history, and it expands a lot of, opportunities for other research, so that's what kind of like, I like that, that concept, and people who are doing that now through this symposium. I learned a lot.
Migrations. I'm gonna look that up afterwards. Thank you. Yeah, I think also, and just, I guess keep throwing out examples, but I feel like I read while I was trying to kind of prepare for this that the University of Hawaii recently acquired a couple of scrolls that I believe you and a small team were in charge of digitizing. And I myself am, interested in Japanese art, so I think there was the Doshisha like online collection. I think they had a couple of scrolls, and of course you can view the whole thing just stretched out. But somehow it's not the same, right? It's like unrolling the scroll bit by bit. And so again, like that tactile experience, and especially I think with art pieces, and I mean, you could argue that all books are kind of their own art, but experiencing sort of the way that the author or creator intended. Again, like you said, that's a whole other thread. That's like an entirely different dimension to the work that you miss out on when it's digitized. So yeah, I totally agree. I was also wondering about perhaps just more in general, like trends maybe that you've seen within Asian studies librarianship. I don't know if there are maybe more librarians who are coming in from a certain field or path or with certain research goals in mind, or just anything maybe that you've noticed in your years of experience in the field.
Okay, having said that, importance of the original prints or books, but I know that trend is digitization, and so because unique materials increasingly require digitization, librarians need knowledge in technology too, such as IIIF transcription software for cursive, characters we call kuzushiji, OCR, and artificial intelligence technologies to make the best of specialized resources and expand user access, that's for sure. And then secondly, I see that this is not new, but many individual institutions cannot on their own accomplish major digitization and digital humanities projects. Therefore, successful librarians need executive leadership skills, not just not just technical skills, to network, negotiate, persuade, collaborate, and raise funds through donor relations and grant writing. In other words, librarians need to be effective kind of like a project managers too, in addition to possessing traditional librarian skills. That's, I really see more and more necessity in this field too. And I just wanted to, okay, I want to take some example, okay? A small library may hold rare and unique resources that librarians want to digitize and make widely available, right? Because we all wanted to expand access. However, the libraries, say, understaffed, unfunded, and lacks specialized technical and scholarly expertise, you know? So substantial funds and infrastructure will also be required to maintain already the digitized, materials or digital site after it's created, right? So actually we all face, even our library face that, and the smaller libraries, smaller staff, of course, face all the time. So if I can cite my own experience, we face that, situation too. So what we did was we actually accomplished this type of digital project in collaboration with the University of the Ryukyu's library in Okinawa, for example, when I wanted to actually digitize these rare books. I needed those things, money, more funding, expertise, all kinds of, scholarly expertise, technical expertise, and so forth that our library doesn't have. So when we decided to digitize over 500 pre-modern rare manuscripts and scrolls, we started discussing the collaborative project. And we wanted to add more values by incorporating English descriptions too. So not only a Japanese, pre-modern language, we actually transcribe those things, and the modern language explanation should be in English and Japanese, and also get more insightful, comments in English from, English-speaking scholars. So our partner library, the University of Ryukyu's library, configured and refined data after we digitized here in Hawaii. And they transcribed the pre-modern text and created a website at their institution to provide access. And in return, on top of the digitization here in Hawaii, we recruited scholars to help us interpret very challenging materials. So it's all collaboration beyond the boundary. We actually worked this in Hawaii and Okinawa in Japan. So yeah, our library doesn't itself possess the necessary expertise and resources to make these historical but challenging rare materials available, but by partnering with the University of the Ryukyu's library, these materials are now widely accessible, and a site undergoes continuous upgrade. When IIIF became available, they just converted our old data into a IIIF compliant. So those things, it's very difficult for us to do alone, Mm-hmm. So I would say successful area studies librarians, of course, have to have traditional skills in librarianship, knowledge and passion, but also need to be able to develop collection strategies, create detailed project plans, cultivate collaborators, explain realistic visions to stakeholders. This is very important too. Seek out and obtain funds and administer and coordinate projects beyond the physical boundaries of their, libraries. That kind of sound overwhelming a little bit, when you listen to those things, qualifications, necessary skills to especially new librarian. But I really believe these are all skills that are developed and refined in a stage over the course of one's career. That's how that happened. 22 years ago, I didn't have much knowledge or skills either. But when you have a passion toward your collections, toward your, patrons and networking with all kinds of community research, library, scholars, communities, can teach you how to develop those skills. But important is you have to love your collections and then use those.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like processing it. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. That Buku project sounds like incredible, like a very, very big project. How long did that take?
About 3 years, I think. Yeah. But come to think about it, yeah, we pulled together like this because of everybody has this passion to achieve common goal. Everybody had that, at that time too. So our relationship still continues to this day because we accomplished truly together one big project like this.
Yeah, I feel like all of those qualities and skills that you mentioned, obviously they come with a lot of time, but especially if you're passionate and you're given, the space to engage with your work, you just kind of do whatever you have to for the sake of that, because, and it doesn't feel like work. Well, I'm sure it feels like work. But, like you just pick those skills up naturally because you can't do anything but what you're doing. You can't imagine doing anything else. I definitely feel that. Do you think that those sorts of collaborative projects are more common now that there's obviously like the internet and stuff are very readily available? Do you think that people are more apt to collaborate and perhaps in ways that they wouldn't have before?
Oh yeah, definitely. The beginning, it was communicating, over the, what do you call, communication has been improved dramatically because of the internet and email and Zoom now. Yeah. So it's much easier to discuss things and, carry on some kind of common goals. But of course, just like meeting in person is also important, right? We all know that the Zoom doesn't solve everything. I wish I can, meet you in person, for example, it's a different feeling. So again, it's we need a hybrid models. And more and more people realize that only the collaboration can make challenging project successful. Even at the glance, maybe the task might look overwhelmingly challenging. But you can actually, chisel down a little by little, what you can do for now, and then accumulates that, task into some bigger goal. So in Japan, we have a saying, proverb, saying that constant dripping water chisel away the stone, or something like that. In English, I don't know if that is a correct translation or not. And even a small effort becomes a big success or big, mountain at the end. So, something like that, in Japanese proverbs. But I think that is very true. And I haven't come this far without the help of so many colleagues and collaborators, scholars, donors. So that's I really feel I'm fortunate, and I have a collection, and I have a lot of ideas about our collections, and I got supporters, collaborators who wanted to help and support to make it happen.
Yeah. Oh man, and I mean, 20 years of having a collection and opportunity and supporters. I mean, that's nothing better, right? I was just curious, I guess, like for my last sort of question, we kind of talked about a lot of different, ways that the field has changed, both for like you personally and also, it in general in terms of digitization and, issues with staffing and funding and where they're putting money. I'm wondering if, as you're sort of on your way out of the field formally, if you have any maybe predictions or hopes for the future of Asian Studies librarianship, or anything that you kind of see in the future of the field.
Yeah. So what I said, more collaboration is an essential for the future. So even the Asian librarians who cannot stay within their own boundary cannot help. You really need to get out of it and reach out different areas, even at the different subjects areas. So that's what it started. SEAL or NCC and those organizations work so hard, yes, within the Japanese library field or even the CJK field. But now we need to reach out to other area studies, even European, or Southeast Asian, or even, South American area studies people, because the library world and the scholarly world too is already cross-boundary areas developed, right? The libraries too, we need to kind of compare our notes or discuss things that together we can do something, something about to, improve access and preserve and, discover something else. So this Asian studies people are naturally very international, cross-country people. Now we have to formally to get together and compare our notes and think about bigger future for the area studies and mainstream studies. So that's how I think things will change dramatically in a few years, and especially after this COVID. And this is a good opportunity for new librarians like yourself. You can bring your own, ideas, or initiatives into this field. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm getting out, but
still be
you
around.
guys are coming in. You guys are coming in. So I'm so
I have your
happy.
email so I can keep you updated.
Yeah.
No, I definitely understand. I mean, obviously, like coming from like a liberal arts background, Swarthmore, yay. It's all like cross-disciplinary, and my subject area was, Zainichi Korean studies, so like Koreans in Japan. And so not only, Japanese and Korean history, how those are intertwined. There's also so many different parallels to diaspora communities across the world. So, the idea of collaborating with Brazilian scholars on Japanese immigrants to Brazil, or, just any sort of scholar of any diaspora community, or even, like gender and sexuality studies, or critical race studies, just all these different disciplines. I think, like you said, if we can sort of formally bring ourselves together and find ways to like forge a brighter future for libraries just in general, beyond just our own subject areas, I think it would be a very, very bright future indeed.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope more newer librarians like yourself will come into the field. I think this is a very exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such an illuminating conversation. I would love to keep in touch with you. And if I have like further questions, or it's like, I don't know, cool books that I think you might want to read, would definitely love to stay in contact with you.
Thank you.
You shared a lot of amazing insight with me, and I really look forward to staying in touch.
I'd love to.
Will do.